legends who's contributed greatly to the history of our sport. With 83 career victories, this driver helped put NASCAR racing on the map. He still carries with him the label of the driver who could best wrestle an ill-handling car all the way to victory lane. To this day, he remains the only man ever to win 3 consecutive Winston Cup championships. Now, as a team owner and highly successful businessman, this Hall of Famer continues as one of the sport's top boosters and goodwill ambassadors. And tonight, you get to meet Cale Yarborough, owner of the Bojangles Ford Thunderbird, on This Week in NASCAR. And now, from the Yarborough home in Atlanta, South Carolina, here's the host of This Week in NASCAR, Eli Gold.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to This Week in NASCAR. Welcome to Cale Yarborough's home here in Atlanta, South Carolina tonight in the den and trophy room. That really talks volumes about the career of this gentleman. Well, if you'd like to join us, by the way, this evening, our phone lines are open as always. 1-800-292-5551. That number puts you in touch with us here at Cale's home tonight on This Week in NASCAR. Before we get to our special guests, let's talk first about the news of this week, and there's been all sorts of news. First, we'll talk about the fact, then we'll talk about the items that could well become fact over the next couple of days. First off, at a press conference today at the Darlington Country Club, Jim Hunter, the president of the Darlington Raceway, announced that effective next spring, the Trans-South 500, the NASCAR Winston Cup event, will be shortened by 100 miles. It will become the Trans-South 400 effective next spring. No word yet as to whether this move on the part of an International Speedway Corporation track might spur similar changes from other speedways across the country, but the lead has now been taken. The Trans-South 400, the new name for the event here at Darlington Raceway next April. The other item we can report on factually is that earlier this week, Ernie Elliott was released as engine builder for the Quaker State Ford. The driver is Brett Bodine. Clearly, Ernie Elliott, an outstanding engine builder, but things just weren't going the way the team wanted here in 1993. Larry Wallace will become the engine builder of choice for that operation. He'll supply engines to both the Quaker State Ford and the Heilig Myers Ford that Junie Donlevy owns and Bobby Hillen drives. So that takes place later this season and on, of course, towards 1994. Now, as far as the stories that could well become fact within the next hour or two, or potentially by early tomorrow morning, Ernie Irvan could well become the driver of the Texaco Haviland Ford, effective tomorrow morning when the teams check into Darlington for the opening of testing and qualifying for this weekend's Southern 500. No deal has yet been signed either by Irvan with Robert Yates Racing, or for that matter, with Ernie and Morgan McClure Racing, to free Ernie Irvan from his contract with the Kodak team. But should all the paperwork be signed either late tonight or early tomorrow morning, look for Ernie in car number 28, effective here this weekend. Should that happen, Jeff Purvis, the young driver from Clarksville, Tennessee, is expected to become the driver of the Kodak Film Chevrolet. Now, many of you have seen and heard and read articles earlier in the week that there is another portion to this whole equation that doesn't seem to be coming true quite yet. The remainder of the story was that Lake Speed was going to leave the Texaco team to join Bud Moore. Then Jeff Bodine would leave Bud Moore to become driver for the team he owns, the Alan Kulwicki Racing team. That would leave Jimmy Hensley on the outside looking in, but at least for the time being, that portion of the story seems to be at least a week off, at least not for this weekend here at Darlington. So that's all that's taken place. Hope you've been able to keep tabs on it. But now let's get to our very special guest of this evening, a gentleman who, along with his wife, Betty Jo, have been kind enough to open the doors to their home here in South Carolina. And what a familiar sight that was. 83 times Cale Yarborough ended up in victory lane following a NASCAR Winston Cup race. Cale, I appreciate having the chance to come back and visit you here. You guys have been so hospitable again today.
Well, Eli, we're always glad to have you. Come anytime. We're going to fatten you up if you keep...
First time I came here, I weighed 116 pounds, so you've done well. I'll tell you, before we talk about your situation and all that's gone on, the news of this week is something. Driver changes, I don't know if silly season is the right term, brought on obviously by a tragedy in the sport, but well, I'll tell you, the contracts and the loyalties of years gone by don't seem to follow through here in the middle to early 1990s.
I don't think I've ever seen it happen like this before, Eli. You know, silly season gets started, and you talk about what's going to happen next year or what may happen next year, but things are going to happen before the year's over. So,
Exactly.
you know, I've never seen this many changes before the year's over.
Folks just saw a quick note about your first ever win back in Valdosta, Georgia. Did you ever think in those days that the sport would even command the attention and the multi-million-dollar deals and the contract buyouts? It sounds like Wall Street gone to Winston Cup racing.
Well, that's about what's happened. Yeah, you know, back in the early days, no, it was more fun back then, and it's turned into all business now. And it's good. It's because the sport has grown to.
Sport is
that.
healthy.
The sport is healthy, and it's grown to that point, and that's the way it's going to happen and should happen when it gets to be as big as it is. But no, back in the Valdosta days, that was a little too far for me ahead for me to think it was going to turn out like it has.
Fortunately, the only man who did have the vision was Bill France Sr., and that's why we're all here today enjoying the fruits of his labors. For the next hour, Cale Yarborough spends time taking your calls. Again, 1-800-292-5551 is the number. So give us a call and join us here at Cale's home in Olathe, South Carolina. This Week in NASCAR rolls on right after this.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, Chevrolet, and your local Chevy dealer. By Smooth Busch Beer and easy drinking Busch Light. And by Kendall Motor Oil. Pour in the protection.
Mountain man survival skills. The basics. A true mountain man must have a keen sense of direction, a certain physical dexterity, and a talent for surviving the most unforgiving climates. Of course, nothing is more key to a mountain man's survival than plenty of Smooth Busch Beer and easy drinking Busch Light. So, head for the mountains and learn how the mountain man survives even the most grueling conditions.
If America had never invented rock and roll, chances are it'd be something like this. Fortunately, we did.
Now dig this, baby. You don't care for me. I don't care about that. You got a new fool. I'd like to laugh at. I am the only one a burning desire.
The new Camaro.
Let me stand next to your
What else would you expect from the country that invented rock and roll?
Okay, Dad.
I'll never forget my first oil change. For more than 5 generations, people have trusted Kendall Motor Oil to protect their engines. Today's Kendall protects better than ever.
Car is a pretty big responsibility,
Yeah?
and this is the key.
Hey, Charlene.
Did you put the drain plug back in, son?
That day, I learned something about motors and motor oil,
What's that look like?
and to be sure to put the drain plug back. Look for the newest members of the Kendall NASCAR racing team, Kyle Petty and Kenny Wallace.
Splitfire earned a United States patent. Splitfire doesn't look like any other spark plug. And the patented Splitfire doesn't work like any other spark plug.
5 extra horsepower by merely installing these plugs. Quicker in the quarter mile. A 4.8% gain in mileage.
There's nothing like a Splitfire. You'll get more power and more mileage, or your money back.
Get guaranteed Splitfire benefits for all gasoline engines at leading automotive stores nationwide.
One of Cale Yarborough's 83 victories coming at Talladega, Alabama, July of 1985, as the Hardee's colors went to victory lane. Is it fair to ask if there was one victory that stands out above all the others, Cale?
Eli, you know, it's hard to pick one out, but if I had to pick one, it would have to be the 1968 Southern 500 in Darlington.
That was a dandy.
That was a dandy, and that was the last time we ran on the old Darlington racetrack, and they changed it after that.
Exactly.
And I think if I'd gone through my racing career without winning on the old Darlington racetrack, I would have missed something, and a lot of people have. That was a tough old racetrack.
Exactly right. Of course, the Darlington Raceway is just about a 30-minute drive from where we sit right now here in Olathe, South Carolina. Our next caller, our first caller of the evening, is down in Jupiter, Florida. Vern, watching on the Sunshine Network tonight. Good evening.
Good evening, Eli. Cale, how you guys doing?
Great, how are you?
I'll try to make this short. Cale, I followed your career both as a driver and an owner since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've even read your book. My wife and I got married after only knowing each other about 4 months. And now, 10 years later, we're trying to make arrangements for a small wedding ceremony at the same speedway we spent our honeymoon. And we would like to know if you would consider, you and Betty Jo, attending this ceremony as my best man.
My goodness, this is certainly a first for this program. I guess the schedules would be the first thing that dictate...
when and where.
Exactly.
Well,
what you might want to do is just contact Cale's business office in Florence, South Carolina. Just contact the dealership there and maybe work things out at that point, but it would certainly be a unique situation, definitely. Charlie, welcome to This Week in NASCAR. Hello.
Thank you, Eli. I tell you, I don't think I could have picked a better night to have called in to, I think, two of the greatest guys in the world of motor racing sports tonight.
Well, we appreciate that, and thanks for your time in Oklahoma. What's your question tonight?
Well, Eli, I'd like to say, first I want to comment to you. I want to tell you, I just want to appreciate the fine job you've done throughout the years covering NASCAR and the drivers themselves. I think you've given the folks around the country a golden opportunity to see the inside and out of racing and the drivers, and I want to comment, just to make a good comment. I think you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cale, I followed your career through many a year, and I tell you, I'm really impressed with it and everything. Eli, help me out on this. I think you mentioned around 3 weeks ago on the program that Cale was testing, or the team was testing a Cougar. Am I right about this?
Right. We had talked about that. You fellows rolled a Cougar out in Daytona. I believe the day before Talladega. Had it worked out, you might have even run it in the Winston, the Die Hard 500. Where does that program sit? What did the Ford Motor Company think about all that?
Well, we've been looking at the Cougar, and with the high spoiler and all that we have to run now, we thought maybe that the square-back Cougar may run it somewhere like Daytona and Talladega, not necessarily anywhere else. And so we decided to build one, and we took it to Daytona before Talladega, hoping that we'd test it, and if it ran good, we was going to run it at Talladega. But unfortunately, it rained and knocked us out of that test down there, so we couldn't. We really haven't given it a fair test yet.
Of course, we've seen notchback cars run and run well in the past.
The old Monte Carlo used to be a pretty good race car.
A darn good race car. We're going to spend this hour chatting with Cale Yarborough, talking about his current racing team. We'll talk about his illustrious career or whatever other direction you'd like to steer the conversation. So give us a call, toll free at 1-800-292-5551. As we leave you right now, we're going to take a look at the top 10 in Winston Cup points heading into this weekend's running of the Southern 500, the Mountain Dew Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway. Don't leave us. We're coming right back to Cale's house in a moment.
Eagles 93 tomorrow night at 6. Eagles 93 brought to you by Fleet Bank.
Houston calls on Southern Cal, but the Trojan double-barreled attack is out to put the run and shoot out to pasture. It's an SWC Pac-10 showdown. The scoring drive, that's what it's all about, beating the team.
Nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown.
First and 10, fourth and inches. It doesn't matter. Just break the tackle. Go all the way. The only goal is take it to the zone.
Saturday night at 6:30 live on Nesson. Your ticket to the best in college football. The world's most popular sport picks up the pace when it moves inside. Don't miss the high-speed action of the Continental Indoor Soccer League. Game of the week, Sunday night at 9 on Nesson. Your ticket to the widest variety of sports.
At Bristol Raceway last Saturday night, the car to the left of your screen, that's the Bojangles Ford. Derek Cope at the wheel. Cale Yarborough Motorsports. Well represented, really, by Derek Cope. A lot of folks don't know him, but he speaks so well. He's a good-looking man, and obviously winning Daytona, winning at Dover. The man can drive a race car.
No doubt about it, Eli. He's got a lot of talent and wants to drive a race car, and he wants to do it the right way. And I just hope we can keep everything together and give him the opportunity that he's looking for, because I'm sold on him.
Sure. I know you and I chatted today at dinner, so this question doesn't come out of left field. I know there's still some question as to exactly what direction the team will go for 94. Not so much driver. You've got Derek, he's happy, you're happy. Sponsor-wise, you told me that there might be a change, there might not.
Well, there may not. There may not be. Bojangles, you know, they've been excellent people to work with this year, but you're always looking, you know, and if better things come along, then that's what we're looking for. So better people couldn't come along, but Bojangles is a small company, and they helped us get through this year, and
sure did.
And we appreciate it, and they've just been great people to work with.
Bunch of good folks. Let's get right back to the phones. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Danny watching on Sports South. Hello.
Hey, Eli, I would like to say for your behalf, roll tide this season.
Thank you, sir.
And also like to ask Cale Yarborough a question. I was very fortunate to get to go to a whole lot of races during the early and mid-'80s. And at one time, he got on a roll where every race I went to, he won. And just wonder how it feels to be a car owner now. Is it frustrating to sit there and watch another driver drive your car around? Do you wish you could get back out there and do it again?
Have you gotten used to it now after all these years?
No. No,
Honest
I haven't.
answer.
No, I haven't. It's tough. You know, even though I'll never get back in a race car to be competitive again, but it's tough. You know, I did it for 33 years.
Sure.
Drove those things for 33 years, and it's tough to just step out of something and quit. But as a driver, I never was nervous. I never was. You know, you always had the butterflies and all before the race, but I could handle that. When the race started, it was all over with. But I am an absolute nervous wreck as a car owner. I sit up on top of that toolbox and just watch that car go around, and I'm a nervous wreck. I realize now what Betty Joe and my family put up with for all those years.
Are you a demanding car owner? Do you think you're a tough man to work for? Because so many great champions expect everybody to succeed at the same level that they did, and obviously not everybody is a Cale Yarborough. Do you think you're a tough man to work for?
I don't think so, Eli. You know, no two people drive a car alike. Everybody likes a different setup, so I can't tell Derek how to drive a car. Now, at times during a race that I may tell him to try another groove that I can see that other cars may be run a little better on, and he might try it, and it might work, and it may not work. He may be doing it right to begin with, but I don't tell him how to drive a race car. That's his business.
Let's go to French Lick, Indiana for our next call. Ken, good evening to you.
Hi, Eli. Hi, Cale.
Hello.
Hey, I really appreciate the years of excitement you've given me as a fan back when races were races and not shows. And number two, I appreciate your honest opinions that you've always seemed to have given the fans. And I got two things for you, Cale, and I'll let you go. At Bristol last Saturday, Jeff Gordon hit Hutt, took him out, then he hit your car and basically tore them both up. What do you think about the NASCAR penalty box enforcement? And number two, will the stock-looking Fords next year get the super modified-looking noses that the GM cars now have, or will there be a change in that, or will they have to go on looking like stock cars compared to super modifieds?
Well, your first question with Jeff, Bristol's a tough racetrack, and it's hard to stay out of trouble. I don't think anybody did anything intentional, but you know, Jeff was in about three deals there during that race, and if you got a penalty box, it should be fair for everybody. You know, if or either get rid of it, throw it away.
As far as the nose
make
of
it
the
work.
nose of the T-birds for
nose
next year?
of the T-birds, we don't know what's going to happen yet. We'd like to have a little better nose, and it may happen. I hope so.
Now to Denver, Colorado for Jay, watching on Prime Sports Rocky Mount. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, Jay. Thank you.
I just wanted to say it's good to talk to Eli and you. And when I was just a little younger, when I was growing up, I know Richard Petty's the king and everything, but I just loved watching Cale. Cale was always my favorite, and it's really nice to finally get through on the air and be able to talk to him. It's really good to see you, Cale, and I miss watching you race. And right now, of course, Rusty's my favorite driver. And other than that, just I wish you...
Appreciate your call.
Sure do. Did you, I'm sure, obviously, you realize the reputation that you had. We mentioned at the very beginning of the show of being able to wrestle a race car. I mean, there were some times out there where, I mean, you just flat out had an ill-handling race car. 2.5 hours later, there's Bill Broderick welcoming you to victory lane. I mean, that was more than just coincidence.
Well, I didn't know any different, Eli. I didn't know how they were supposed to handle to begin with. So,
what was your background in racing? Did you just, was there racing in your family, or did you just say this is the route that Cale wants to try?
Well, I started racing, you know, I was born right in this area, right here as a farm boy, and well, my father took me to some races when I was young, but he got killed at an early age, and my first race was in a soapbox derby.
Really?
And yeah, I ran a couple of years in soapbox derby, and didn't do any good there, so then I built my first race car when I was 15. Out on the farm and just started on the local dirt tracks. I'll take that back a little bit, but I didn't know any better. I did know it. I knew how a car was supposed to handle, but however it handled, I tried to do my best with it, and I won a lot of races with the ill-handling race cars, no doubt about it.
And surrounded by all of these trophies, that's a further testimony to all that Cale has done. We're going to break away here for just a moment, but before we leave you, a quick mention of our next couple of shows on This Week in NASCAR. Next weekend, the NASCAR Winston Cup and Busch Series head to Richmond, Virginia. We'll be there as well next Thursday at the Holiday Inn Airport. We'd love for you to folks come on by and join us there in person. If not, tune in right here on Prime Network. In 2 weeks, we'll be at Dover, Delaware, the Sheraton Inn on Route 13, Dover, Delaware. Hope you can come on by. It'll be our only appearance there this year. Remember the first time the series ran at Dover, we did our show from Washington with Joe Gibbs. So those of you who always come to visit in Dover, look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. Right now, as we leave you, here's a look at Winston Cup point standings, 11 through 20, heading into Sunday's running of the Mountain Dew Southern 500. Stick around, we're right back.
For nearly 2 decades, he's been the heart of the Kansas City Royals. Now in the twilight of his career, George Brett comes to Fenway in what could be his final appearance. See one of baseball's all-time greats, Saturday afternoon, live on NESN.
Really heats up on the weekends, especially with the return of college and pro football. And NESN Sports Desk, the weekend edition, will be there from end zone to end zone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Rogers, along with Don Mitchell, and we'll keep tabs on all the exciting gridiron action every Saturday and Sunday from 6 to 10.
And the Red Sox are staying close, and this weekend the Royals will be looking for revenge. So tune to NESN Sports Desk for the most complete sports wrap-up.
When you take into account all different races at Daytona International Speedway, the winningest stock car driver was the man who in this picture was driving the Hardee's car, Cale Yarborough. 4 Daytona 500 wins, umpteen number of other wins. You mastered that racetrack awfully well.
Well, it was it just suited me just right, I think, Eli. I like the speed, and it just we just got along good. Yeah, I won a lot of races there. Not only you know, I won some IROC races there, all kinds of races there. So it was good to me.
Welcome back to This Week in NASCAR. We're at Cale Yarborough's home here in Atlanta, South Carolina. Our next caller is in Ottumwa, Iowa. John, thanks for your patience. Good evening.
Hi, Eli. Hi, Cale. That's a good segue because I wanted to ask about the last lap crash. I was pretty young when it happened. I believe it was at Daytona a couple years ago, and I want to know if you could talk about the freaks that ensued afterwards, Cale.
I guess he's talking of the Donnie Allison, Cale Yarborough, Bobby Allison affair.
I wish it was a couple of years ago. That's been,
it's been a long time ago.
That's been a long time ago. Yeah, we, you know, that was a race that I thought I should have won, and Donnie and I had Donnie set up to slingshot him on the last lap, and he didn't give me any room going down the backstretch, and I got off in the mud, and we got together, and it then wrecked us both out and gave Richard Petty the race. So just one of those things, you know.
One of the most asked questions of you, is it? Do you think over the years?
Over the years, yeah, it
so.
has been a question that's been asked a lot, but Donnie and Bobby and I are very close friends. As a matter of fact, I'm an honorary member of the Alabama gang. So
exactly right.
Right.
Let's go now down to Moultrie, Georgia. Tip is watching on Sports South. Hello.
Hello there. Hi, Eli. How you and Cale tonight?
We're just fine. Thank you, sir.
Cale, I had the pleasure of seeing you win your first race, the old Valdosta 75 Speedway in a 64 Ford, and also I had the pleasure, well, it wouldn't be a pleasure for you, I don't guess, I was up at Darlington at Southern 500 when you and Sam McQuagg, the former track champion at the Valdosta 75, tangled, and you went out over the railing, and I had to understand the late Bob Colvin tried to charge admission to get back into the race. Is that true?
Well, that story's certainly been told a lot. I don't remember whether it was true or not, but it was quite a ride out of that racetrack, I'll tell you.
There were some personalities, no doubt about that, over the years. Gary is up next with a question from Hollywood, Florida. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Cale, I just wanted to express my vote for the Mercury Cougars. Hope you'll be bringing them back. I've kind of missed them in the NASCAR scene and hope that you can bring them back. It's one of my favorite times. Now I'm kind of a second heart Ford Thunderbird backer, but would love to see the Mercury's back and hope you bring them back soon.
Well, we got it sitting in the shop, and we're going to certainly give it a shot and see what it'll do.
What was your favorite race car? Of all the cars you've ever driven, was there one that was just so special?
I don't think, Eli. You know, I guess I won in everything that I drove, just like I won on every racetrack that I raced on. So it'd be hard for me to pick a favorite racetrack or a favorite car, because I won on all of them and won in all of them.
Spending time with one of the great veterans this evening, Cale Yarborough. Now let's take a look at some of the outstanding rookies battling for the Max Race Card Rookie of the Year point chase here in 1993. A three-man race, as it has been for much of the year. Take a look. We're coming right back.
Corvette back by Eureka for home or auto. 10 tools included. Power for big jobs, tight spots, extra long torque. Corvette back by Eureka.
Serving America's great sports networks. You're watching Prime Network.
For the car you drive, or the way you drive. Slick 50 high performance engine formula.
When you own a classic car like this, it pays to take care of it. The best gas, the best oil, the best tires, and the best car care products. The Wax Shop. How do I know they're the best? That's how I know. The Wax Shop is used by those who demand the best.
The Wax Shop. The pros use them because they're easy and they work. Find out for yourself why the Wax Shop is #1 in customer satisfaction.
What is a mountain man's natural environment? Let's explore. A mountain man enjoys peaceful surroundings. a place where gentle winds blow, and the beauty of nature is all about. Only here does the mountain man find true happiness with a smooth bush beer or an easy drinking bush light. So, head for the mountains and find out how the true mountain man can make any environment a more natural one.
Well, not unlike Richard Petty last November at Atlanta. That's the final word for Cale Yarborough in his illustrious Winston Cup career, going out in less than the blaze of glory you would have liked, but still it puts a capper on an outstanding career about which we're speaking this evening. Welcome back to Olathe, South Carolina. Eli Gold and Cale Yarborough here in Cale's beautiful home. He and Betty Joe for the second year in a row kind enough to welcome us into the house. Let's go out to Orange, California now for our next call. John, watching on Prime Ticket. Hello.
Hi, how you doing, Eli?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, this is really cool. I remember watching Cale on Channel 2 here in Orange, and I remember one time when he won back-to-back Daytona 500s, and he had the camera in the car. And I remember one thing that he did, the camera was right next to him, and you could hear him actually making noise in the car like he was, come on, you know, like trying to make the car go faster. And I compare him basically to the big number 3 car course right now. I compare him to Dale as aggressive as he was, you know, and I think him and Dale are similar in the way they drive. How does he compare himself to Dale Earnhardt?
Well, I think you're probably right. I was pretty aggressive, and Dale Earnhardt's pretty aggressive too. So I think we were pretty similar in driving style.
As we said before, Cale gave everything he had to get that race car going correctly. Now out to Seattle, Washington on Prime Sports Northwest. Howie, good evening.
Good evening. Nice talking to you all. I was wondering about, I'm up here from Seattle, raced at the Spanaway Speedway where Derek's from.
Sure.
And it seems like in the last few years, Derek's been running really good at the Chevys. Now he's in a Ford. Would there be any chance of you possibly switching over to the Chevy bow tie cam?
Not really. No, we, you know, our program is set up with Ford right now, and we plan to stay with Ford.
Now to McLeod, Oklahoma. Dan, good evening.
Good evening, Eli. I'm heading for the East Coast early Saturday morning, and I wanted to head for the Darlington track.
Sure.
I don't know where it is.
It is right in downtown Darlington, South Carolina. Downtown, actually, to be technically correct, downtown's about 3 or 4 miles away, the downtown square. But Florence, South Carolina, if you want to grab an atlas, Darlington is virtually just adjacent to Florence, South Carolina. So come on by and join us. You're going to be seeing a most unique racetrack. What do you think about shortening the races next year? We had talked about not both races, but the Trans-South, the spring race, maintaining the tradition of Labor Day's Southern 500. What do you think about shortening it up to 400 miles?
I think it's great. I think that some of the other tracks around the country, and I know some fans don't want to hear this, but some of the races are too long. Dover's too long, Rockingham too long, and I hope that they're going to follow suit. I think it's time now, because you know people enjoy some of the shorter races just as, and they usually turn out to be better races than some of the long ones anyway.
Cale Yarborough, our special guest this evening. We're going to come right back and check out the manufacturer's point standings, but right now let's get right back to the phone lines. Jack in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, watching on Home Team Sports. Hello.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Cale.
Yes, sir.
Is the Lincoln Mark 8 on a T-Bird chassis, and did you consider it at all, since it's so aerodynamic, along with the Cougar?
No, because it's not. It won't do what we think the Cougar will do. We're looking for the notch back, the square back, and to take some of the wind off of that big spoiler.
Of course, over the years, there have been a lot of cars that have been eligible for NASCAR competition, the Lincoln Continental among them, but I don't know how the fans would take to seeing a so-called luxury car out there.
Well, you know, you never know.
No, you never do.
You know, back in the early days, they had some Cadillacs running.
Exactly
and
right.
Kind of stuff.
As we mentioned, we've got the manufacturer's points to bring your way, so take a look as we head into this weekend's activities here at Darlington, and we're coming right back. More of your calls for Cale, so stay with us.
Sometimes in life, you have to seize the moment. That's what Racer Magazine does for you. Here's the auto racing monthly you've been waiting for. It's about time. Racer is informed, emotional, authoritative, and passionate, with large-scale, full-color graphics, written and photographed by the best. Something worth reading, something worth keeping. There are no long, boring race reports. You already know what happened. Racer tells you how it was done. We want you to have the opportunity to take Racer for a test drive, to experience this new magazine for yourself. To order a trial subscription, call toll-free 1-800-553-7400. There's no risk, there's no obligation. If you're not happy with your first issue, just mark cancel on your bill. We don't think you will. Seize the moment. Take Racer for a test drive. Call toll-free 1-800-553-7400.
Place on earth that I'd rather be than out in the open where it's all plain to see. If it's gonna get done, it's up to you and me. Come on and head for the mountains of Bush. Come on and head for the mountains of Bush. Beer.
With the boss of the household looking down from upon us, we are here in the den, the trophy room of Cale Yarborough's home. And this is a piston mounted on a block of wood next to a sports cycling book, which I'm sure has its own story, but we don't see many pistons mounted like that. What's the story there?
Eli, that's the piston that came out of the engine that I won the first championship in, and
Really?
Harold Elliott took the piston out of the engine and made me a trophy out of it, and you know, it's a pretty unique thing.
Sure, flanked here by a International Race of Champions trophy, one from North Wilkesboro, this one from 1978 at Bristol Raceway in Tennessee, and the list goes on and on. Let's get right back to the phones now and go to Arlington, Texas, a viewer on HSE. Greg, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Eli. You got a great show there. I sure do enjoy watching it.
Thank you.
Coming from Texas, we don't have the coverage yet. We're still watching the fourth quarter of a football game, but I'll catch up tomorrow on it. But my question is, I hear you answer the question about why some tracks don't get races because, you know, there's too many tracks to go around for all the people that want to see a race. But
sure.
We got the Texas World down in Bryan, and I just can't understand why some tracks get 2 races a year when there's folks like us out here that would really enjoy one race. You know, why can't they maybe just do one race at Loudon, maybe do another race elsewhere in the state?
Well, I think we should
appreciate it.
We really should point out, though, that all of the new tracks coming on the circuit are getting just one race. There is only one Winston Cup race in Loudon, New Hampshire, one Winston Cup race at Watkins Glen, one at Sears Point, one at Phoenix, and so on. The tracks that have the multiple events have been grandfathered in. And Cale, you're a businessman. I think you can appreciate what Bill France Jr. is going through now, because there's not a facility out there that wouldn't want to host either a Winston Cup or a NASCAR Busch Series race. You've got to do what's best for the overall operation.
Well, there's not only one out there that wouldn't, but there are plenty of people out there that would build one if they could get a date.
Exactly. Let's go to St. George, Utah for our next call. Tim, good evening to you.
How you doing, Eli? How you doing, Kel?
Great.
I wanted to ask you a question about in 1969 NASCAR when they used to race the Ford Torinos and Talladegas. What you thought of them when you drove them, and how would you compare them to the small bucks of today?
Well, they were a lot of fun to drive. You know, they were hard race cars to drive. The tires weren't developed like we have now. And we had didn't have the spoilers, and we had that big engine in there that was putting out a lot of horsepower, and you know, the cars just weren't near as stable as they are now. And they were hard race cars to drive, much harder than they are now. They were hot, and the windows rolled up.
I bet. Was Goodyear's tire development the single biggest technological step, do you think, in the overall growth of this sport, or would you finger something else?
No, I think you're probably right, Eli. Goodyear's put a lot of work in developing a safe tire and a good tire that's this just escalated the sport, really, is what it amounts to.
We're going to come back, continue with Cale Yarborough, so don't you go away. But right now, as we leave for a moment here, here's a look at some information pertaining to this weekend's activities here at Darlington. Take a look, and we return in just a moment.
For the best in fresh and saltwater fishing, tune in each week to Jim Baugh's American Angler. We'll show you some of America's top fishing holes, as well as great tips on travel and cooking. So join us each week as we take you on the most beautiful angling adventures in America. That's Jim Baugh's American Angler.
Wednesdays at 5:30 on NASCAR, your ticket to the great outdoors.
Enjoy the natural beauty of the nation to the north with Canadian sport fishing Wednesday night at 6 on Nesson, your ticket to the great outdoors.
Join Fishing the West in its brand new season as host Larry Schoenborn teams up with his new host, professional angler and tournament champion Jeff Boyer. Come along each week as Larry and Jeff take turns bringing you the hottest lake, stream, and coastal fishing in your backyard and throughout the Western Hemisphere. You'll be right in the boat learning the latest techniques from top guides on their local waters, admiring breathtaking scenery as only Fishing the West delivers. Join Larry and Jeff each week for the best Fishing the West yet.
Wednesday night at 6:30 on Nesson.
A full moon over Olanta, South Carolina. Right overhead, Cale Yarborough's home. As we welcome you back to This Week in NASCAR, I'll tell you one thing is for sure, it has been a fairly warm day here today. I was seeing the 6 o'clock news tonight locally, and it had cooled off to about 97 degrees. So it's been a bit of a scorcher here in the area. Gary is next from Parsippany, New Jersey, watching on the Madison Square Garden Network. Hello. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Hello, Eli, Carl. Listen, I used to race 10 years ago down in Florida, modified. And I was always following you, Carl, when you were out there racing, and I take my helmet off to the way you were a sportsman and the way you drive. You're just one of the supers out there.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your call. Now to Wilford, who joins us next on This Week in NASCAR. Good evening from Hialeah, Florida. Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
You have a good show?
Thank you, sir.
I was wondering if you know or heard anything about the new track down in Homestead.
I have heard some talk about it, but to be very honest, I really don't know all that much about it. There has been talk of late of a number of different motorsports complexes that are on the drawing board in Central Florida and in South Florida, but as of this moment, really no facts to share with you. But if we hear something, we'll certainly keep you informed. Now to the state of Michigan, Elaine, watching on the PASS system. Good evening.
Good evening to you. I was beginning to think this was an all-man show.
I'm glad you got through tonight, Elaine.
I want to just make a couple of comments. I too have had two sons in Soapbox Derby, so I know where this brand of excellence comes from.
Sure.
Cale, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I've admired your ability and your talent for years, and I think we're pretty much of an age here. I have great respect for you, and I admired your fair play, and I know the wanting to win is a good thing, but I think you always were decent about it, and I think that's a marvelous thing, and I hope that you continue with your good luck with Derek, and in the future, your cars, and I hope to see him racing too.
Thank you very much.
And I must say, that same sense of fair play and decency, it's in your entire family. You've got a beautiful family.
Thank you, Eli. I'm very proud of him.
I know you should be. Let's go now to Tom. He is next in Comstock Park. Good evening.
Morning, Eli.
How are things in Michigan?
Real good.
Good.
How you doing, Cale?
Fine. How are you?
Cale, how would you like a senior tour? you, Richard, Benny Parsons, run something at Daytona next year?
Or any other track, maybe not Daytona.
You know, there's been some talk about it. I would certainly entertain the idea.
Problem is, you get into a seniors tour, next thing you know, we're going to be seeing you out there in a Winston Cup car again.
I think so. I think it could probably be done, though, but maybe on short tracks or something. Have a little fun anyway.
You know, one thing, you compare the golf scenes to racing. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and just this past week, the Bruno's Classic for the seniors tour was in town. It was great to see those personalities again, but on the PGA Tour of today, you don't have as many personalities. Winston Cup racing is different. You guys, the seniors, if you will, had great personalities, but we still have those personalities in the fellows who now race week in and week out. I think it's a little bit of a difference.
I think you're right, Eli. Of course, I still think it would create a lot of attention, though, and maybe it would be fun, but putting a racing team together and race cars together to do something like that is a whole lot more expensive than buying a golf club, you know.
That's true. But I'd buy a ticket to see you guys, though, I promise you that. Jacksonville, Florida is up next. Dan on the Sunshine Network. Hello.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
How you doing, Cale?
Fine, how are you?
All right. I've been wanting to, every race I go to, I've been trying to talk to you in person, and I know you can't forget the 79 Daytona 500. I wanted to ask you if you remembered, this is an odd question, the tow truck that towed the Bush Oldsmobile from the Speedway. That was my father. It was Dr. Dan's towing service. And I was at the track, and you know, like I said, every race I go to, I wanted to ask you this in person, but I just wanted to know if you remembered that.
I'll tell you, Father, I certainly appreciate the tow, but I had more on my mind then.
We've gotten some interesting questions, though. Talking about a tow truck in 79. You've been invited to be somebody's best man on the show tonight, so lots to talk about. We've got more of your calls coming up as well, but before we leave you, again, a quick reminder about our next couple of shows on This Week in NASCAR. Next Thursday from Richmond, Virginia, we'll be at the Holiday Inn Airport. Do come on by and join us if you're in the area. We'd love to say hello. If not, join us right here on Prime Network. And in 2 weeks, to the Sheraton on Route 13 in Dover, Delaware, for This Week in NASCAR on Prime Network. Don't leave us. We're coming right back with more from Cale's home. Right now, here's a quick look at the broadcast schedule for Sunday's running of the Southern 500, sponsored by Mountain Dew.
Hello, I'm Tom Kite, and I'd like to tell you about a magazine that takes you where the news is breaking. Golf World, the #1 news magazine in golf. Golf World brings you in-depth coverage of all major tournaments more than 40 times a year, weekly during peak season.
Get more than 40 news-breaking issues for just $23.77, 40% off the regular subscription price. Order now and get 10 swings from the tour free with your paid subscription. Call 800-634-1200. That's 800-634-1200.
Welcome back to the Den and Trophy Room here at Cale Yarborough's home in Olathe, South Carolina. Back to the phones on This Week in NASCAR and to Douglasville, Georgia. Ronnie, watching on Sports South. Hello.
How you doing, Eli?
Good, thank you.
Enjoy your show.
Thanks, sir.
I got two questions, one for you and one for Cal. For one thing, how's Stanley Smith doing? I ain't heard a lot.
Stanley is coming along nicely. He continues to recover in Birmingham, and the prognosis is certainly very, very good.
Okay, Carl. I am a member of the RCCA Club of America, and I'm interested in how you got tied up with that, if you could comment on that.
Well, we just worked out a deal to where I would represent them in their club, and just one of those things we do, you know. They're a fine club and got a good program going, so I'm proud to be a part of it.
Now to Lewis, Delaware. Glenn, good evening.
Good evening. Appreciate the time here. Sure. Cale, really appreciate your style of personality and driving. A number of years ago, I wrote a letter to Ned Jarrett when it was inside Winston Cup, before it was, inside Winston Cup there racing. I never got a reply on the TV, but my question was, why, with all your success with Chevrolet, did you switch to Ford?
You mean back when I was driving?
Yeah.
Well, you know, racing is a business just like everything else is, and you have to do what you think's right, and it's all business, and that's what it boils down to.
Now to Dubuque, Iowa for our next call. Good evening, Doug. How are you?
Yeah, hello, Eli. Hello, Cale.
Hi, howdy.
And this is a question for Cale. My mom and dad were down there. It's not really a question. I was just wondering if you could say hello to them. Chuck and Frida Nesby from Dubuque, Iowa.
Okay, where are they?
They're here in Darlington.
Oh, they're here in Darlington?
Oh, Chuck and
Okay,
Frida, good to
I'll
have
look
you
them
with us. Thank you for your time. Now to Bill, next on This Week in NASCAR. Good evening in Picayune, Mississippi. Hello.
How you doing there?
Good.
I had a question for Cale.
Sure.
If you could give some of the small-time drivers down here where I'm at some tips on how to pick up some sponsors. It's real hard down here in South Mississippi to get any help out of any of the local businesses or even some of the bigger ones.
That's the $3 million question.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that question. We'd all be better off.
Did you find it best to do it yourself or contract with somebody to knock on doors for you?
I always found out it was better to do it myself, Eli. But there are a lot of people out there that do find sponsors for people, and that's one way to go.
But certainly in a smaller community such as Picayune, Mississippi, knocking on the door with that personal touch is the best way to do it. Now to Benny, who joins us in Elkins, West Virginia. Hello.
Yes, Cale?
Yeah.
Do you think that the Mopars will ever come back into racing?
I would like to see that. I think that there's room for another motor company in racing, and I feel like, yes, maybe a year or two from now, I really feel like Chrysler will be back in it. They're talking about it some now, and they're running some ARCA cars and doing quite well, so I think the next step is Winston Cup.
And I remember back when Ricky Rudd had his press conference in Michigan announcing his team for next year, a lot of questions about would you have gone with Chrysler if they were ready, and you kind of got the idea that he might have had they been ready. Charlie is next with a question. Good evening, sir, and welcome from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Charlie, are you there?
Yes.
Go right ahead, sir.
Hello, Eli.
Hi there.
How's the show?
Thank you.
My question for Cale is, he drove with several different teams during his career. Which team did he enjoy driving for the most?
Well, that's just like which car and which track. You know, it's I drove for some great people. I drove for the Wood Brothers, starting with Banjo Matthews, the Wood Brothers, Junior Johnson, Harry Renier, M.C. Anderson. All of them were great people, and I drove for myself.
You did. You drove for yourself. Yeah, but when you win with everybody, like you said, it's tough to single out one from the next.
They were all great people.
Is there one career memory though that does stand out? Was it the third championship in a row? Your fourth 500? You mentioned Darlington as a single race. Is that just difficult?
It was just too many, Eli. It was just too many things to.
You're a lucky man when you've got that many memories.
You know, quite lucky.
Exactly.
No doubt about it, but it's just hard to pick one thing out. It was all good.
I hear you. Cale Yarborough with us tonight from his home here in Olathe, South Carolina. We're going to come back. Some final thoughts from a man who really helped shape the world of NASCAR Winston Cup racing. Don't you leave us. We're coming right back.
This Week in NASCAR has been brought to you by Kendall Motor Oil. Pour in the protection. By the Heartbeat of America Chevrolet and your local Chevy dealer. And by Smooth Busch Beer and Easy Drinking Busch Light.
Oh, hey there, Grandpa. How's the old truck running?
Never been better. Oh, I brought your graduation present by. Well, it's been in the family a long time.
Kendall Motor Oil. It's good
Yep.
stuff. Thanks, Gramps. I'm not quite sure what to say.
Well, that and this old truck kind of go together. It's yours, as long as you take care of it.
Look for the newest members of the Kendall NASCAR racing team, Kyle Petty and Kenny Wallace.
While everyone talks about how racing technology makes their street cars better, there isn't a car company today that brings more race-winning technology to the street than Chevrolet.
What does it take to be a mountain man? Do you need a big horse? Do you need a deep tan? Do you have to have a saddle? Do you have to have the gear? Well, the simple truth is you just gotta have the beer.
Busch Beer, an easy drinking Busch Light. Have you got what it takes to be a mountain man?
What does it take to live a mountain man's life? If Smooth Busch Beer is a drinking Busch Light.
Only the biggest, baddest bulls. Only the meanest, toughest cowboys. Bull riders only. Don't miss a second of the action on Prime.
Cale Yarborough, as we wind things down, let's talk very quickly about your racing team. Where does a team need to go now to become a consistent contender week in and week out? What needs to be worked on next?
Eli, we've got a good race team and got good people. Derek's a good race driver. But we have had more bad luck this year than anybody on the circuit. Martin went through this for a while. You know, he had a lot of bad luck and all, and other people go through this. But we have run good, but we have had the worst luck this year of anybody that you can imagine. But if that bad luck ever turns into good luck, we gonna win some races, I can guarantee.
Cale, save this seat for us for next year because we have stranded a lot of folks on the phones tonight who want to chat. We'll do it again next year.
Very good, Eli.
Thanks for having us
Thank
in.
you.
Cale Yarborough, our special guest tonight on This Week in NASCAR. Next Thursday, Richmond, Virginia, the Holiday Inn Airport. We'd love to see you in person, and in 2 weeks at the Sheraton in Dover, Delaware. But for now, that's it. Our thanks to Cale and to Betty Jo, who've been so hospitable to us here in Olanta. I'm Eli Gold. Have a great week. So long, everybody.